Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie.
Blondie, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
You do?
I do. I've been feeling a little bit neglected lately. I'm missing our day-to-day interactions. You know I rely on you for stuff like that.
You're so needy. And you have been neglected.
I know.
I have been volunteering at the local fair doing wine service.
You definitely love your wine.
This I do. I'm a little bit of a wino.
For a little bit. Okay, we'll go with that.
No judging here.
No judging, just facts, strictly facts.
Yes, I do like my wine, and I do like volunteering. That's one of my little passions that I like to do.
Yes, you do. You are definitely a philanthropist and give a lot of your time as well.
Yes, I know. Sometimes you give me grief.
Well, there you go. I should be your cause. You know, I require a lot.
Yes, you are a high maintenance charity. Yes, you are.
Oh, my Lord. You're not the first person to tell me that this week.
Just this week? I was thinking today. Yes, I do like my wine, but well, the funny part about that is we are exact opposites on so many levels.
Yes, we are. And I'm thankful for that.
Anytime we go anywhere. I mean, not that it happens very often, but what do I like to drink? And if I'm not there, it's always a margarita.
That's all I know. And I was really proud of myself when I knew the difference between blended and ice. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, blended and over ice.
Yes, there you go.
You got that one right. But was there an extra shot? Did you have a float on it?
Oh, don't complicate things, okay? It's just me and Maggie. Me and Maggie, we're fine. Leave us alone.
Oh, my gosh. You know what? The funny thing is they could probably just give you lemonade and you'd be happy.
I'd be perfectly fine because I'm the designated driver everywhere we go.
Yes. As a wino and doing a little bit of wine tasting where you give me all of your tastes because you take a sip and make face.
Because it's so gross.
But I do appreciate the fact that you are driving.
I try to when in Rome, but not always. It's just not my deal.
I know. I always have to figure out what is it that she's going to lie.
And here you're building your life around volunteering for wine things. And I'm just like, yuck.
Whatever.
I know, but I am excited to hear about what's going on with this Randy Kraft in the second half of this episode. Boy, what an interesting story so far and pretty dang gruesome.
He was a very gruesome individual. We talked about this before. I can't imagine what gets into somebody's head.
Yeah, and he kind of does a lot of the same things over and over, but it's still just like, I don't know how you could do anything like that the first time, no less many times over. It's so disturbing.
You have no idea.
Yeah, I know. I can only imagine it because I know they usually get a little progressively worse. So I'm on pins and needles right now.
Okay, well, let's let the grim begin.
Oh, look at you go. What happened to get your grim on? You were standing hard on that one.
Because you poo-pooed me.
Well, see, this one's better.
No. Okay, so let's get our grim on.
Oh, whatever.
And continue with the story of, not even the story, the case of Randy Kraft.
Let's do it.
Okay. In 1979, Randy Kraft and Jeff Sealing were still together. Kraft bought a house in Long Beach. Kraft started a new job in August 1980 at Lear Siegler Incorporated as a computer consultant. LSI had regional offices in Oregon, Michigan, and San Diego. Kraft would travel to Oregon, Michigan, and the San Francisco Bay Area for work. It seemed that wherever he would go, the killings continued. 1 month after Kraft returned from Oregon on September 3rd, 1980, children playing near El Toro Air Base noticed a large bag. Inside, they found the body of Robert Wyatt Loggins, a 19-year-old Marine. He was last seen by his fellow Marines on August 23rd. Cause of death was drug and acute alcohol poisoning. Police linked him to Kraft through a Polaroid in Kraft's possession of Loggins slumped on Kraft's couch. There were apparently a number of photos where Loggins was posed. His eyes were never open, so they couldn't determine whether he was dead or alive during those pictures. Scorecard, MCHB tattoo. Now, it was said that Loggins had a large tattoo on his arm.
Well, I wondered when you said that where that came from, but that makes sense now in
That makes
Crazy
sense.
Land. Yeah.
Now, so he has a house with ceiling, so I wonder, where was ceiling all this time? I mean,
Because the photos were actually at his home?
yes, this was at his house on his couch. And the picture showed Loggins sitting, and there were bloodstains on his pants while he was on the couch.
Oh.
Unless it didn't go through or he just didn't notice. I don't know, maybe as a woman, that'd be the first thing I'd see.
Oh, that's interesting. Because are you saying, are you wondering if ceiling might have been involved with some of these?
I kind of wonder, honestly. I
Huh.
do wonder. He was questioned, but there was never any proof that he did anything.
But you're right. I mean, blood is hard to clean out of anything, but on a couch, it would be even more hard. I mean, you pretty much just smear it around unless you had a machine to suck it up.
Right.
I'm not trying to sound insensitive. I'm just saying it would be a very hard thing to clean up for somebody not to notice at all that there was blood stains on the couch. So it does make you wonder.
It made me wonder when I read that.
Interesting.
Ooh. The killings began to happen in other states, Oregon and Michigan in 1981 and 1982. 4 young males with alcohol and pharmaceuticals in their bloodstreams were found along mass transportation in Oregon. Cause of death, strangulation. While 2 cousins, drugged and strangled, were found murdered in Michigan. My God.
Wow. Cousins even.
Yes.
Oh,
Investigators in Oregon began sending details of the murders to police in other states. The theory was that whoever was killing these men could possibly be someone who travels for business. Investigators began a computer search looking for individuals that traveled to and from the areas multiple times and when the murders occurred. As 1983 just began, a hitchhiker named Eric Church, 21 years old, was found discarded along the 605 freeway on January 27th. He had high levels of alcohol and Valium in his blood. There were rope marks on his wrists, and he had been sodomized. His head was smashed with a blunt object. He died from strangulation. The scorecard did not list Eric Church. He was one of 2 not on the list. But later, there was a match to Kraft based on semen found in the body.
so is this the first time that they found a person that Kraft killed and wasn't on his scorecard?
His scorecard had 61 references. A lot of them were John Doe's at the time, but throughout new technology, things like that, some of them were identified.
Okay.
On February 12th, 1983, Jeffrey Allen Nelson, 18, and Roger James Duvall, Jr., 20, decided to go to get something to eat around midnight, leaving on foot from their homes only to disappear. Nelson was found a few hours later thrown from a moving vehicle on the Garden Grove Freeway. He was nude, emasculated, and strangled. Duvall was found the next day in a ravine close to Mount Baldy. He had been bound, sodomized, and strangled. Both Nelson and Duvall had drugs and alcohol in their systems. Scorecard, 2-in-1 hitch.
Oh my gosh. Oh, what a sick, sick mind.
He so was. On May 14th, 1983, the night Randy Kraft was pulled over and arrested for drunk driving, the paramedics were called to attend to the non-responsive man in Kraft's car. The paramedics pronounced him dead. He was 25-year-old Marine Terry Lee Gambrell. Gambrell's blood contained extremely high levels of alcohol and prescription tranquilizers. Cause of death? Strangulation. He was the second victim that was not listed on the scorecard.
Wow. So he's starting to not write things down. I wonder why.
Well, in this particular instance, I believe it was because he still had him in the car. He hadn't gotten rid of him yet. So he didn't have a chance. He was arrested at this point.
Got it. So he didn't have a chance to put whatever highlight he wanted to put on his little scorecard.
Right. Gambrel was actually the last person that he killed.
Oh, my goodness. I think that just makes it more tragic. I guess somebody has to be the last person, but just makes you wonder.
I know. The Orange County Sheriff's Department obtained a search warrant for his car looking for evidence. The search of the car found alcohol, tranquilizers, and other prescription drugs. In the back seat, a belt was found that matched the width of the bruising on Gambrel's neck. The passenger seat cushion and floor carpet was heavily bloodstained. However, no open wounds appeared on Gambrel. The carpet was removed, tested, and results showed it was human blood. Under the passenger seat carpet was an envelope with more than 50 Polaroids of pornographically posed men that appeared to be unconscious or not alive. Looking in the trunk, a list was found on yellow legal paper with 61 obscure notations, starting with stable. After a search of Kraft and Seeling's home, it revealed their living room couch was in several Polaroids of the nude and posed men. Fibers from the carpet matched the murder of Scott Hughes in April 1978. There were various items of clothing, chains, belts, shoelaces, and personal possessions of the victims that had been murdered over the previous decade. On May 16, 1983, Randy Kraft was formally charged with one count of murder, that of Terry Lee Gambrel, and held in lieu of the $250,000 bond. Kraft pled not guilty. Judge Ryan increased his bail, feeling he was too dangerous to be let out. He was held till his trial.
Well, thank goodness Judge Ryan had his head on straight and didn't let this maniac out with everything that had been going on. And I'm sure by this time they knew they had a serial killer out there. So, I mean, you just hear too many times about how on a technicality, people were let back out. So thank goodness this guy didn't do that.
Exactly. Kraft's attorney tried to get a bail reduction 1 week later, but the prosecutor came back and charged him with 4 more murders: Robert Loggins, Eric Church, Roger Duval, and Jeffrey Nelson. A week later, Kraft was charged with the brutalizing and killing of Mark Hall. The preliminary trial began after 5 postponements on September 27, 1983, and lasted 7 weeks. Hundreds of witness interviews and over 200 physical exhibits were presented. The judge found the evidence sufficient for trial. Kraft was formally charged with a total of 16 murders, 2 counts of sodomy, and 1 count of emasculation for the killings from December 1972 to May 1983. Kraft pled not guilty.
Okay, hold on. I have a question. I'm questioning why 16 murders he's being charged with. Obviously, those 16 bodies had so many forms of abuse. I think they were all sodomized, and quite a few of them were emasculated and tortured. So how is there only 2 counts of sodomy with 16 bodies and 1 emasculation in all of those 16 murders? If they're charging him with the murders, and that's how those people were murdered, how did all of those things not get added to the charges? I'm very confused by that.
That is a very good question, and I thought the exact same thing when I read the charges. That question actually puts you in the frame of mind of the jury and what they ultimately heard and had to consider. But from my research and the details I described in the last 2 episodes, there were 4 victims that were sodomized and 6 that were emasculated. According to the autopsies, the 1 emasculation charge and the 2 sodomy charges had occurred while the victims were still alive.
Well, that explains a little bit of it, and I see maybe where they're going with that. But I'm sorry, if he did that to each body, he should be charged with it. That's just my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
And that's a good opinion. You are right. But unfortunately, and I don't know the exact laws of it, but it has to do with being alive, because if he sodomizes them when they're dead, that's necrophilia. So,
well, it's
that's a different
necrophilia,
charge.
That's abuse of a corpse, and that is a different charge, and he should have at least been charged with that.
I agree. 5 years after Kraft was arrested, the trial began on September 26, 1988. Kraft's attorney presented a motion to exclude evidence that was retrieved during the 1983 searches. The judge denied the motion, but said that he would not allow any detail of other victims to be included, only the 16 that Kraft was charged with. Defense attorney's opening statement said that the charges were suspicious, innuendo, and prosecutory rhetoric. He continued, calling Kraft a homeowner, taxpayer, and hard worker, just like every other citizen in this country, ending with, Mr. Kraft killed no one.
I don't know how criminal defense attorneys do it. I really don't.
Not with a conscience. You've got all this evidence.
I know somebody's got to do it, but I don't know how they do it.
I'm on that train with you. I don't know.
Yep.
During the trial, over 157 witnesses and 1,000 exhibits were presented as evidence by the prosecution. One of the witnesses was Joseph Fancher, the 13-year-old runaway he assaulted in 1970. The exhibits included bloodstains, hair, fiber evidence from the search of Kraft's house, fingerprints on glass shards recovered from Hall's murder scene, negatives, photos, and a buck knife from Kraft's car, along with prescription drugs. The prosecution also brought in other evidence, which included work and travel records and gasoline receipts, placing Kraft in those locations at the time of the murders. During the computer search that was conducted between Oregon and California investigators, showed Kraft's name appearing 18 times. 8 more charges were filed, 2 in Michigan and 6 in Oregon, but they would never go to trial. The trial lasted 13 months and was the most expensive trial in Orange County history, costing $10 million, with closing arguments lasting 3 days and the jury deliberation lasting 11 days.
Wow.
On May 12, 1989, Kraft was found guilty of the 16 counts of murder, 1 count of sodomy, and 1 count of emasculation. The penalty phase began on June 5, 1989, where further testimony was given to the same jury. In this testimony, the defense introduced a PET scan that was performed on Kraft, supposedly revealing abnormalities in the frontal lobe of his brain, reducing his ability to control emotions and impulse. The prosecution's response to that was, and I quote, "There is nothing wrong with Mr. Kraft's mind other than he likes killing for sexual satisfaction," end quote.
Oh man, that's a strong quote.
That's a very strong statement.
Wow.
He was done. He had seen enough. He had done enough prosecuting on why this man should be gone.
It sounds like he was saying, I'm not trying to prove he wasn't normal in every other way except for this thing, you know?
Right.
But it's a strong statement because of the way he says it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. The jury returned on August 11th, 1989, with a verdict of death. Judge McCartan formally sentenced Randy Kraft to death on November 29th, 1989. The sentence was upheld by the California Supreme Court on August 9th, 2000. In January 2000, journalist Dennis McDougal published an article interviewing a small-time criminal, Bob Jackson. Jackson basically confessed to murdering hitchhikers with Kraft, 1 in Wyoming, 1 in Colorado, and several in California. Nothing could be corroborated, no charges were filed, but detectives did persuade Jackson to enter a mental institution. More disturbing, in Jackson's opinion, Kraft only listed his, I quote, more memorable murders on his scorecard. There is more likely to be closer to a total of almost 100. To this day, Randy Kraft declares his innocence. It has been 40 years since Kraft's arrest. He is still on death row and is 78 years old. Randy Kraft is said to be very clean-cut. His jumpsuit is always tidy and strict with himself, doesn't talk much, and has his Playgirl magazines delivered to his cell. I was curious to find out how much it costs to house an inmate. In California, it's approximately $34,000 per year, with an additional cost of $90,000 per year for inmates on death row. This cost includes security, housing, food, medical, and even more medical for aging inmates.
Why would it take so long? How long has it been? About 40 years?
It's been 40 years.
For this guy to be executed. Why? What in the world could be the reason why?
Other than people saying that it's not humane, I don't know. I do know that we did in California vote for the death penalty, but why it's not being carried out, I don't understand. I think the last execution was 2006, if I remember correctly.
And there hasn't been one since?
I think that was the last execution.
We need to look into that because that is ridiculous. So you're saying everybody on death row, and I know you're probably not ready for this question, everybody on death row from 2006 is just hanging out?
If that was the last execution, and if that is the actual date, it's not even people since 2006, people that were sentenced to death before 2006.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like people who are supposed to be executed from 2006 forward are just living their lives and maybe possibly living out a full natural life. Yes, they're in prison on death row, but at least they get to live, whereas their victims didn't have that option.
Right. No, I agree. He's 78 years old, and by the time the wheels spin to where justice should be served, he probably won't be around.
That is just so ridiculous. And I really would like for us to look into that a little bit and see what the deal is, because if you're sentenced to death, at some point within a reasonable amount of time, you should die. It's the moral. I mean, how are these families going to see justice in their lifetime when this guy just keeps living and everybody else, has to watch that happening when their loved ones at such a youthful age were killed? That is a horrible, horrible thing. And yes, I would like for us to look into that and maybe get back and tell a little bit about what's going on there.
We can check into a few things and do an update. I think that's a good idea. We will be remembering all those men that lost their lives if you would like to have that moment with us. Wayne Joseph Duquette, Edward Daniel Moore, Kevin Clark Bailey, Ronnie Jean Weeb, Vincent Cruz Masteas, Malcolm Eugene Little, James Dale Reeves, Roger Edward Dickerson, John Lauris, Craig Janatus, Keith Crotwell, Scott Michael Hears, Roland Gerald Young, Richard Allen Keith, Keith Arthur Klingbeil, Richard Anthony Crosby, Michael Joseph Interbiden, Donald Harold Crisell, Gregory Wallace Jolly, Jeffrey Sayer,
Mark Allen Mars, Michael Sean O'Fallon from Portland, Robert Wyatt Loggins, Michael Cluck from Portland, Christopher Allen Williams, Raymond Davis, Robert Avila, Arnie McKeel Lane, Brian Witcher from Portland, Anthony Jose Silveira from Portland, Dennis Alt from Grand Rapids, Christopher Schoenborn from Grand Rapids, Lance Taggs, Eric Church, Jeffrey Nelson, Roger Duval, Terry Lee Gambro. A special remembrance of those who have yet to be identified. Our hope is that someday they will be identified to bring peace to their families.
May you all rest in peace.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits and Facebook grimwitwithdimwits to listen for our new episodes. And feel free to share with your grim-loving friends. We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.